Hello, and welcome to episode 554 of the official EstablishTheRun.com podcast. My name is Adam Levitan, as always, joined by Evan Silva. We're coming off of draft weekend. Got a good look at how teams view these rookies, how they view their current veterans, their current depth chart, and more. Evan, how's it going?
It's good. I've got Giants and Jets fans arguing with each other in my Twitter mentions, so that's always good for the mental health and a reminder that that draft grades matter. All right, I'll say that.
I've said this before, I'll say it again. Fantasy people, fantasy Twitter is the best. Once your tweets reach NFL and laundry bro Twitter, that's where everything takes a turn. I'm hopeful that none of my tweets ever reach NFL Twitter, NFL fan Twitter, laundry Twitter again. On today's show, we're going to be going team by team through the AFC, talking about our reactions to the draft, fantasy winners and losers, everything in between. Before we get into it, remind everyone of two things. Best Ball Bros. Best Ball Mania 4 is live on Underdog. $15 million prize pool. We've been grinding our cocks all weekend to get our rankings in a good place. I think you need to have a good baseline of rankings, and then you can upload our rankings directly to the app, and then you can make your picks from there. You do need DraftKit Pro to access our Best Ball coverage. This year, DraftKit Pro covers Best Ball, Dynasty, Redraft. It's $49.99. Second, DFS grinders, USFL, and golf. Currently in full swing. We are covering both. PGA Championship rapidly approaching. In the golf streets, head to the subscribe tab on EstablishTheRun.com for more. All right. Hopefully you've already listened to the NFC team by team. We are going to do AFC team by team here today, and we'll start with the Baltimore Ravens. I'm excited about the Ravens, man. They take Zay Flowers at 22 overall. Todd Monken is in. Lamar Jackson is back. We have Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman allegedly healthy, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, Isaiah Likely, Nelson Aguilar. I mean, this is the best group by far that Lamar Jackson has had, and I think he'll have the most aggressive passing coach he's had in his career. What do you think of Zay Flowers' pick at 22 overall, and anything else on the Ravens draft?
Well, Zay Flowers, I mean, the way that he walked through, I mean, did you see what he was wearing?
Yeah, ball.
Like that dude was dripping hard out there. I mean, like I love that. I love that swag. And also, I mean, all of a sudden, like they have a legit, I mean, this should be the pass catcher core, the best pass catcher core of Lamar Jackson's career. I would feel so much better about being a Ravens fan right now than I did on last Tuesday, a week ago, because they got Lamar signed to a deal that I think was good on both sides. And now they've got Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Odell Beckham, Rashad Bateman, Isaiah Likely, Nelson Aguilar. That's pretty strong. I mean, I feel really good about that. And now they're under the direction of the GOAT, Todd Monken. So very, very excited about Lamar Jackson's fantasy outlook in the short and long term. Tavius Robinson, I saw what Daniel Jeremiah was showing of him during the broadcast, and just looks like a dude with an explosive get off. I looked up his dimensions. He's a super long outside pass rusher who lines up in a 4-point stance and just gets upfield. Trenton Simpson, they like to take their linebackers. Roquan Smith is technically a part of this draft grade, but and he was so good for them. I mean, he was a true difference maker for them down the stretch, but they paid him so much money that I'm not counting that as a positive regarding their draft grade. I like how they came back and took Andrew Voorhees, who tore his ACL at the combine. Imagine it's going to be like a day 2 pick. They took him in the 7th round. I think that he's a guy to a good guy to stash. I gave him a C+. I saw other people giving him way higher grades. I gave him a C+, but I mean, I'm with you. I like what they're building in terms of the pass catcher core, and I think they're going to be more aggressive officially passing the ball this season. They didn't draft a running back, by the way.
Yeah, and those are my two fantasy notes. The first one, they did not draft a running back, which I think is really good news for J.K. Dobbins' health. They did not add a running back in free agency either. I mean, they basically only have J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, and Justice Hill, the same group they had last year. Again, J.K. Dobbins, another year removed from the knee injury. I think it's a really good sign for him. We're ahead of market in J.K. Dobbins in the rankings right now. We are significantly behind the market in Zay Flowers ranking. We currently have Zay Flowers 132nd overall. And it's not that we don't like Zay Flowers as a player. I don't think they're, and I get it with Todd Monken, I don't think they're all of a sudden going to throw for 5,000 yards.
Right.
And they have a lot of mouths to feed. And so not the best landing spot, I don't think, for Zay Flowers, but he could easily wind up being the best of this group. He could be better than Rashad Bateman. He could be better than this version of Odell. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think could have been a better landing spot for Zay Flowers. He could have found a better one. Let's go to Buffalo. So here's what happened with Buffalo. 4 straight wide receivers go off the board in the early 20s. I feel like the Bills wanted one of them. They're like, well, 4 of those are gone. We better make sure we get Dalton Kincaid, because Dalton Kincaid is not really a tight end. Yeah, I know he's listed as tight end, and that's huge for fantasy when guys like this get listed as tight end. I think Dalton Kincaid's actually going to be the new slot guy. You know, I mean, we have Dalton Kincaid 153rd overall, but I'd personally be willing to go higher. It just depends on how many targets you think Gabe Davis is going to earn. Do you think Dalton Kincaid can actually play the slots? So I'm curious, Evan, your take on the Dalton Kincaid pick. Anything else on the Bills draft?
I mean, he played slot receiver at Utah. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting Dawson Knox to remain like the inline Y tight end. And then Dalton Kincaid to be the slot receiver between Gabe Davis and Stephon Diggs. And they can move Diggs in the slot and move Kincaid outside at times. I'm good with it. They hopped Dallas to go get him. Yeah, there was that wide receiver run they kind of missed out on, and they were like, all right, fine, let's go get our next highest rated pass catcher, and that was Dalton Kincaid. Obviously, I preferred Michael Mayer, but I think in this certain situation, I'm totally fine with it. I thought it was a pretty good pick. Osiris Torrance, the guard out of Florida, had like legit first-round buzz. So for them to get him at number 59 at a need position, that was a steal, and they just sat there and took him. Dorian Williams, the Tulane linebacker, is like the classic Matt Milano sort of, hyper athletic, super long arms, 34-inch arms at 6'1", 227, 4.54 he ran at the combine. That's the rangy linebacker that can cover, that the Bills want to be able to match up with running backs and tight ends. I really liked their draft. I gave them a B-, because they did have to move up to go get Kincaid, and that cost them a 4th rounder. And I didn't really love their super late rounders or anything. But, I mean, I gave them a solid B-, and I think they got better.
Yeah, that was the note. They just added Latavius Murray this morning as a free agent to their backfield. I do think that James Cook they want him to be the guy. They're not sure about it. They have Damian Harris. Now they have Latavius Murray also. Bengals. But I was watching the Bengals stuff closely just because I'm fascinated by what's going to happen with Joe Mixon. He has this big cap number. He's also facing some criminal charges of menacing, and Samaje Perine is gone. I just think the win now window is here, like for the Bengals right now, and you can't responsibly go into the backfield with like Chase Brown, who they took in the 5th round, or Travion Williams and Chris Evans. So I feel pretty good about Mixon being back now. Doesn't mean they won't add someone like Kareem Hunt or Leonard Fournette or someone like that, but I feel better now than I did before about Joe Mixon being back in Cincy. They did not take a running back until round 5 again in Chase Brown. Evan, what do you think of what the Bengals did?
Well, I'll tell you in a second. All right, I have a decision, okay? We're now in the 4th round of this dynasty startup, and we're trying to decide between Kyle Pitts and Drake London. No tight end premium or anything, but, there is value in having an elite tight end. Is Kyle Pitts an elite tight end? Me and my partner think that he is. And we know he's had this weird low-scoring start to his career. But, I mean, I think he could pop big time at any point. But I don't know. Would you take Drake London or Kyle Pitts?
I would take Drake London, but I'm so scarred from last year that I'm having a hard time with Kyle Pitts evaluations this year. But, yeah, like young rookies, young wide receivers to me is like, the way to build in dynasty. I would say Drake London.
Yeah, the thing is that the older wide receivers that are like 28, 29, 30, those guys go really late.
Yeah.
In this format. I don't know. Can Kyle Pitts get to that Kelsey sort of level? I mean, I still feel like you can. I don't know. We got to get on with the show. I'm sorry. Cincinnati Bengals. So, they did not go need at number 28 overall because they already had 3 good pass rushers in Trey Hendrickson, Sam Hubbard, and Joseph Asai. But I'm fine with it. I definitely subscribe to the notion that you can never have too many pass rushers. Now they have 4. And then I like how they came back and attacked the secondary, because you remember they lost both of their starting safeties in free agency. And they're also very thin at corner. They get Michigan cornerback DJ Turner, who is so fast. I mean, he ran 4.26. Like, nobody's running by this dude. And then they got Jordan Battle, who was a 4-year starter at Alabama at safety. That was their biggest need. And like, he's going to be ready to come in and compete after learning from Nick Saban for 3 years. And then they got a burner in Charlie Jones. We don't know what's going to happen with T. Higgins with that negotiation, because then they're going to have to pay Chase, and they got to pay Burrow, and they might have to let go of T. Higgins. I think Charlie Jones gives them at least an option. And then Chase Brown, I think, is really interesting for fantasy. You have Joe Mixon's off-field situation. You have his contractual situation. And then Samaje Perine has gone to Denver. So I think Chase Brown, who was a really good player at Illinois and ran 4.41 before the draft and is a pretty good receiver, I think that's a really good situation for him. He's really only got to beat out Travion Williams, I believe, to be number 2 behind Joe Mixon.
Yeah, and I'd add to that Joe Mixon stuff that he did not play that well last year, Joe Mixon, in a lot of games. I mean, Joe Mixon was not that good. They played Samaje Perine over him, even in base, in some really big situations. And so, yeah, I think the Chase Brown thing is interesting. I want to get your thoughts on the Irv Smith. I mean, everybody thought the Bengals were going to take a tight end. Everybody. Oh, Bengals going to take a tight end. It's a great tight end class. Bengals lost Hayden Hurst. They did not take a tight end. It looks like they're going to go with Irv Smith. This is a hard projection on Irv Smith because he has not produced in the NFL to date in his career. We do have him 156th overall, which is 36 spots ahead of ADP right now. Can Irv Smith finally break out on his second team, which we've seen tight end happen to a bunch?
Yeah, I mean, I still think that he can.
He's still super young.
Really young. I mean, he's like 24, going on 25. I think he's going to be an excellent late round tight end pick. Those late round tight end picks do not pan out more often than not, but we're going to keep taking shots on him.
Yeah, I mean, and some of these 3 tight end builds can certainly include Irv Smith. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he's only battling with like Drew Sample and David Asiasi. Okay, Cleveland did not even have a pick until round 3, 74th overall, due to the Deshaun Watson trade. They used that pick on Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee. I don't see that clean of a path for Cedric Tillman. They have David Bell, they have DPJ, they have Elijah Moore, and then obviously they have Amari Cooper. I'd also note that Cleveland did not draft a running back at all, even though Kareem Hunt remains unsigned. Evan, what do you think of the Browns draft?
Yeah, which is interesting for Jerome Ford if he's able to ascend to that number 2 running back spot behind Nick Chubb. I mean, the Browns were handicapped by their trade for Deshaun Watson, and I penalized them in the draft grade for that because Deshaun Watson sucked as a 6-game starter last year, and because that was a questionable decision for them to do that anyways. They turned the number 42 overall pick, which was that was their top pick entering into they turned that into Elijah Moore and Cedric Tillman.
Right.
So that's a potential slot receiver and a big physical outside receiver prospects for them to try to mold into potential starters. And then Saki Ika Baylor. This is just a massive space eater. Reminds me of Danny Shelton. Probably a one-trick pony, but to add some girth on the interior of that defensive line. And then you want to talk about a massive dude, DeJuan Jones out of Ohio State. This dude is like 6'8" or something, and like almost 400 pounds. He reminds me of Trent Brown, who's kind of bounced around, but I mean, he's had a pretty good career between the Patriots and a couple other teams. But he's just a classic boomer bust guy, massive arms. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was a little bit interesting as like a super sleeper in Dynasty because he's got like some serious wheels. And, he was a competent enough passer. He completed almost 70% of his passes last year for Chip Kelly at UCLA. I gave him a C-, but I think they did a pretty good job with the draft capital that they had.
Yeah, I did want to highlight the Jerome Ford stuff. I'm Not sure Jerome Ford is like the big back that they want to kind of complement or give Nick Chubb a breather. I do think Cleveland's like a sneaky candidate to add someone like Ezekiel Elliott or bring back Kareem Hunt or something like that. But yeah, for now, Jerome Ford, I think, is the number 2. Demetric Felton is more of like a strict receiving type back. Denver, we already talked about, one of the most lopsided trades, if not the most lopsided trade in NFL history, left Denver without very much at all. They only make 5 picks here in this draft. I don't know. Wide receiver didn't feel like a big need for me for Denver. 63 overall on Marvin Mims. They have Sutton under contract. Jerry Jeudy, they just picked up his 5th-year option. They have him cheap for 2 more years. I expect Tim Patrick to be healthy. So not a lot of picks. They use 1 on Marvin Mims. What did you think of Denver's draft, Evan?
Well, Russell Wilson was a part of it.
Yeah.
So you're starting with an F. And then I didn't like what they did. I did like the pick of Drew Sanders, number 67. We talked about it on the NFC show that it was supposed to be him and Jack Campbell sort of neck and neck to be the number 1 linebacker drafted. Drew Sanders was way more productive, especially as a pass rusher in college. Apparently had some character concerns. I don't know, but he went number 67. Jack Campbell went number 18. That was the pick that really stuck out to me that I liked. And I did like Riley Moss, who is going to be the first white cornerback since Jason Sehorn. Really good athlete. Bucky Brooks was talking about how he looked the part of a cornerback at the Senior Bowl, and he's got good size, and he was a playmaker at Iowa. I really like that pick. They needed help at that position. Marvin Mims, I don't know what they're doing because they just exercised Jerry Jeudy's 5th-year option. And they're getting back Tim Patrick, and they're getting back KJ Hamler, and they didn't trade Cortland Sutton, and they traded up for Marvin Mims.
Yeah.
It's, I understand when you have a new coach coming in, he's going to want to put his stamp on the team. Couldn't you have done it at a different position? Because that's like the strongest position group on Denver's roster.
For sure. Not a strong.
He better be really good. I mean, he better be really good.
Yeah. I did want to note, I thought it was a good draft for Samaje Perine. There's been bad reports about Javonte Williams' health, man. And we dropped Javonte Williams all the way down to 105th overall in our rankings. We actually have Perine ahead of him in 99th. We are about 16 spots ahead of ADP. Samaje Perine right now, they did not draft a back. Javonte Williams' health stuff is not good, does not sound great. And Sean Payton was just like all over Samaje Perine to bring him in free agency. So I still like Perine. I like us being 16 spots ahead on Perine. It's crowded at tight end here, man. I mean, they have Troutman now. They have Manhurts. They have Alberto. They have Dulcich. We'll see what happens there. I think they want Dulcich, but Alberto stuff, we'll see. It seems like he has very specific skill set that some coaches like and some other coaches don't. So we'll see there. Houston. Decided to stay at number 2 overall and take CJ Stroud, despite all the rumors that CJ Stroud would drop. Houston stays at 2. They take him. I think everybody would agree that they gave up way too much to come back up to 3 to get Will Anderson. The rumor about what happened is coaches, D'Amico Ryans wanted Will Anderson, franchise owners, whatever. They wanted CJ Stroud. The compromise was, we'll just get them both, which is like not really that great of a strategy when you're dealing with a billion-dollar organization. It's like, we can't agree. Let's just go get both. I don't love them coming back up for Will Anderson, considering what they gave up. Evan, what do you think of the Texans draft?
I saw it get like sort of heavily criticized, and I mean, I get it. I definitely think that they gave up too much to go get Will Anderson and sort of split that compromise between the owner and the front office and the scouting department, all that. But you know what? They still came out of the draft with the number 2 quarterback and the number 1 pass rusher. And then I think they did really well with the rest of their picks. Also Shaq Mason is a part of this draft because they got him for a day 3 pick swap from Tampa Bay. He's going to be a quality starting guard for them. So that really helps. And then they went and got Juice Scruggs out of Penn State, who's just like the strongest interior offensive lineman in the draft. I think he actually might end up at guard as a starting guard. And then they got Jarrett Patterson, Notre Dame center, just a technician. You can find starting centers in the 6th round. Definitely guys who played at Notre Dame and get guys blocked. Tank Dell, 165 pounds, but he's not playing outside. He's playing beneath the retractable roof in Houston, so we don't have to worry about the wind blowing him away. And then Henry Toto, That guy was just like a leader. He wore the green dot in Alabama's defense. Probably a special teamer and number 4 linebacker. I've actually heard that they're really excited about Tank Dell. He's going to play on the outside as sort of like a T.Y. Hilton, Marquise Brown sort of role. And they're going to and John Mechie, who looks like he's back and he's rolling. He's going to be their primary slot receiver.
Nice. Yeah. There was a lot of stuff connecting Bijan Robinson to the Texans that did not end up happening. Dameon Pierce's role is safe, and I think that's the right move for the Texans. Like, they proved you can find quality backs later in the draft. Dameon Pierce is that. We have him 59th overall right now. That's about 4 spots ahead of ADP. We are slightly behind ADP. You're actually kind of right in line with Devin Singletary, who's going to be the backup to Dameon Pierce.
I think they're excited about Dameon Pierce, and I think Dameon Pierce and Devin Singletary just a guy.
Colts. So they stay at their pick also. They stay at pick 4, and they take Anthony Richardson. I know this Anthony Richardson stuff like evokes these crazy emotions from people. I would just encourage people to try to think probabilistically. You know, obviously there's a chance Anthony Richardson is a massive bust. Let's say you think there's only a 5% chance Anthony Richardson ever reaches Jalen Hurts levels. Fine, 5%. I might take that, man. I mean, it is such a huge hit to hit on one of these quarterbacks like Anthony Richardson, who can just dominate the game with his legs and arms. So we'll see how it works out. I still think it was the right pick for Indy. They're claiming they would have taken him number 1 overall. I don't know if I buy that, but they decided to take him over Will Levis. They were also linked heavily to Levis. Evan, what do you think about the Anthony Richardson pick and the Colts draft?
I love the Colts draft. They put an extreme emphasis, and Chris Ballard is known for doing this. He comes from the Chiefs. They use a lot of like spark sort of stuff. I mean, they're more advanced than that, but they definitely use analytical methods to evaluate athleticism. And oh my God, they got so many stud athletes. I mean, it is nuts. Obviously, Anthony Richardson, most athletic quarterback ever at the combine. Julius Brents, big, long, he's 6'3", big, long, athletic. Like Gus Bradley is their defensive coordinator, comes from that Seattle school. He's going to love Josh Brents because that's, the Richard Sherman mold. Josh Downs, he's, a smaller sort of T.Y. Hilton lookalike receiver. But then Blake Freeland, oh my God, this guy, super, super interesting. He's huge, he's long, he's athletic, and I think that he could actually end up being a starter at left tackle for them. They had big-time problems with Bernard Raymond as their left tackle and some other guys in there last year, and I think that Blake Freeland out of BYU actually has a chance to be a starting left tackle for them. And then Adebawore out of Northwestern, and then Darius Rush. Like, they got like a lot of really good prospects in value positions. Even they got our boy Evan Hull, and then Jake Witt, Northern Michigan offensive tackle. He worked out like an absolute freak before the draft. I gave him an A-. They really needed this. I mean, they got a quarterback, and they replenished the back end of their roster with a ton of big-time athletes. I know that they really struggled last year, and Chris Ballard almost lost his job. I think he went a long way toward helping himself here, and putting Anthony Richardson obviously under Shane Steichen, I think, is brilliant.
If you think Anthony Richardson succeeds as a passer, I do think Josh Downs is worth noting. Take him at pick 79. He can play in the slot right away between Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman. So I thought that one was interesting. And then, Evan mentioned Evan Hull in the 5th round. I mean, pure pass catcher. Like, this dude, if they decide to take Jonathan Taylor off the field on 3rd downs, as they did with Naheem Hines and other pass catching backs, maybe Evan Hull can win that role, and we'll need to know him. Jacksonville. So at 27, they take Anton Harrison. They take another blocker out of Penn State this time, blocking tight end Brandon Strange at 61 overall. They also take a running back in Tank Bigsby, which we mentioned on the NFC pod. Evan, what did you think of Jacksonville?
So I usually like the idea of trading back and stockpiling picks. I kind of question it in this particular draft because of what we talked about, the strength of the draft or the lack of strength of the draft as a whole. And so I think the Jaguars I think they traded down a little bit too much. And they got a lot of players. I mean, shoot, how was this, 11 draft picks? 11 or 12 draft picks. They had to go tackle up top because of Cam Robinson's suspension. They're moving Walker Little, their right tackle, to left tackle, and they're going to start Anton Harrison at right tackle next to Brandon Scherf. So, putting him next to that, multiple Pro Bowl veteran, They have an obvious plan for Anton Harrison. I like that. But Brenton Strange, he went a little early. He went like at the back end of that tight end run, and it seemed a little bit out of desperation. He was a really good blocker, but didn't have a lot of production at Penn State. I don't know. We'll see. He's a pretty good athlete. He has room for growth. Tank Bigsby, third round running back, and then pretty much like a bunch of guys. They took a bunch of shots on a bunch of day three guys. So I don't know. I didn't love this draft. I gave him a C+.
I thought one of the reasons that Travis Etienne was such a valuable fantasy player at times last year was because he was getting like 95% of the running back touches after James Robinson left. I think Tank Bigsby has a chance to cut into that, and that's something we'll be tracking for sure. For now, we have Travis Etienne 30th overall, Bigsby 170th overall. But I think the battle there and seeing how much Tank Bigsby can earn will be important this offseason. By the way, Jacksonville's wide receiver. I was thinking about what are the best three wide receiver sets in the NFL. Jacksonville's is pretty strong. I would put Seattle up there now that they have Jack Smith and Jigba. Obviously, the Bengals with T and Boyd and Jamar Chase. But Jacksonville, man, Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones, and Christian Kirk is pretty nice. So, and Evan Ingram. So, yeah.
Zay Jones. Yeah. And also, Calvin Ridley was a part of this draft since the Jaguars got him for it was a day 3 pick this year, and then a third rounder that could become a second rounder next year.
Speaking of not good 3 wide receiver sets, let's go to Kansas City. So, Rashee Rice out of SMU. I watched the video of Clark Hunt of them like talking to Rashee Rice, and it was like, oh, we're going to go get Clark Hunt, a receiver out of SMU. Like, I don't want to say that they took Rashee Rice because Clark Hunt went to SMU and Rashee Rice went to SMU, but God, man, that would be crazy. I don't think they did that, but this did look like a reach just from a straight talent perspective. There were other wide receivers I expect to go off the board before Rashee Rice. Everybody in fantasy wants to know, is this Patrick Mahomes' new toy? What do you think about how Rashee Rice will fit in Kansas City?
Well, Patrick Mahomes wanted Rashee Rice because they worked out together before the draft, and Patrick Mahomes just like fell in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
Rashee Rice, so people are going to compare him to McCole Hardman and Sky Moore, and everybody always gets excited about the next, the new Chiefs receiver. And it's not because that's stupid. It's just that those guys haven't worked out. Sky Moore had a sort of slow rookie year, and McCole Hardman, he didn't have production in college. Rashee Rice had insane production in college. Okay, number one. I wrote in my draft grades that he arguably has the best combination of size, athleticism, and college production of any receiver in the draft. His athleticism is awesome. He has actual size. He's like 6'1", 205. He was immensely productive, particularly last season. The Chiefs traded up for him. I'm going to get excited again. I don't care. I will go back to the well, and I love Rashee Rice in the middle to late of dynasty rookie drafts, in the middle to late portion of the first round in dynasty rookie drafts. They started off with Felix and Nduke Uzoma, who has been compared to Yannick Ngakoue, who's not a run defender, but like can be really disruptive off the edge, and they really needed that. Frank Clark is like a free agent, and he's not coming back to Kansas City. And then Wanya Morris, I think, was a smart pick out of Oklahoma, offensive tackle. Lucas Niang right now is penciled in as their right tackle, but he needed competition. So Wanya Morris out of the big school will come in and compete with him right away.
There are a lot of wide receivers on this team. Separating them is not going to be easy. My bet to be the best receiver of this group is still on Kadarius Toney, but I'm not completely writing off Sky Moore. We know MVS is going to be in there to stretch the field. They still have Richie James, Justin Ross, people like, and now they add Rashee Rice. So it's going to be a lot. And they have Justin Watson, who they play also. And they just re-signed Jerick McKinnon today, by the way, as expected, to fill some pass catching role as well. So yeah, there's a lot here, but long-term making bets on pass catchers attached to Patrick Mahomes who you like Evan does and Rashee Rice, I think it's at least interesting. A lot of mocks had Jahmyr Gibbs falling here. Once they didn't get him, obviously they were nowhere close to getting him. Bring back Jerick McKinnon. I think that'll be perfectly fine. Las Vegas. 7th overall, they make, what I would consider a very Raiders pick. Not much college production from Tyree Wilson, but an excellent athletic profile. They also ended Michael Mayer's slide, if you can call it that, at 35th overall to help replace Darren Waller, I sent a tweet, Evan, that I was hoping to get your attention with.
Oh, I saw it.
Okay, good. Austin, if you look, Austin Hooper, who by the way is on the Raiders, and Michael Mayer, who just got drafted by the Raiders, have an almost identical size, speed, athletic profile. I want to do the Spider-Man gif for pointing at each other. But anyways, Evan, what do you think of Michael Mayer to the Raiders? Anything else on there?
That was egregious. And, I've been thinking, I was like, what? I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. Austin Hooper is like a finesse possession tight end, and Michael Mayer is an absolute beast. Austin Hooper, obviously, was like a late 3rd round pick, and Michael Mayer was a super high 2nd round pick for whom his team traded up. I'm just going to let it go. Okay? I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to say, don't do that again. Okay. But I was excited for him to go. I think it's a great landing spot for him. And I still think he's the best all-around tight end in the draft, and I think he's going to prove a lot of the haters wrong. Tyree Wilson at number 7 wound up being a pretty nice value, considering a lot of people thought he might go as early as number 2 overall to the Texans. Is it overkill with Chandler Jones and Max Crosby there already? I would say no, because Chandler Jones didn't have the best season last year. Is getting up there in age. I think it was a fine pick. And then Byron Young, big 5 technique type out of Crimson, out of Alabama. Trey Tucker, one of 19 5'9", 170 pound wide receivers who can run like the wind. They went and got him. So I thought it was a pretty good draft. And obviously, them trading up for Michael Mayer, I get my full approval. I gave him a B-.
Okay. Unsurprisingly. Chargers, a little bit surprising that Quentin Johnson was the 2nd wide receiver off the board. I did go on the Ross Tucker show and talked about that bet at 5-1. I thought it was good. Still didn't think it was very likely, but they take Quentin Johnston over Jordan Addison, over Zay Flowers. And, if you're looking for a big outside receiver who looks good getting off the bus, that is certainly Quentin Johnston in this draft. They now have Big Mike, Keenan Allen, Josh Palmer, and Quentin Johnston. How do you think Quentin fits in? Any other thoughts on the Chargers draft?
Well, what the Chargers do every single year is they just sit and pick. Like I put in my Draft Gauge article that I wouldn't even be surprised if teams just don't call them like ever, because they never move up or down. Tom Telesco. And I think that Tom Telesco does pretty well for the most part. He hasn't been perfect, but I think he does pretty well. I had Quentin Johnson as the 1st wide receiver, and I took that at 14-1, and he was 1 spot off Jackson Smith and Jigba. So that kind of hurt. But I think that the process behind that was pretty good. The result just didn't get it. Quentin Johnson is a massive run after catch stud. So I think that he's going to be like the Z receiver. Mike Williams will be the X, and Keenan Allen will be the slot. And that's a lot of size. And you got Jared Everett at tight end. That's a lot of size outside. Tui Tupulotu out of USC led the nation in sacks this past year. Teams were kind of down on his athleticism. That's why he fell to 54th. But that kind of production is hard to find. And then Deion Henley, the Chargers did not exercise the 5th-year option on Kenneth Murray. So Deion Henley, I think, will have a chance to play no later than 2024 at inside linebacker. And then Darius Davis was the 2022 Big 12 Special Teams Player of the Year. He scored 6 career return TDs at TCU, brings that speed that the Chargers have been missing on offense. Kind of an interesting early day 3 guy there, Darius Davis, TCU wide receiver.
I thought the biggest things from a fantasy perspective from the Chargers were what they didn't do. They did not take a running back. And I know there's been a ton of Austin Eckler rumors out there. The truth is that no one's going to trade for Austin Eckler, a 28-year-old running back, and then give him a big contract that he wants on top of that. So I think this was the final nail in the coffin. Austin Eckler seems like a great dude. It sucks. He's a great player. It sucks he plays the wrong position, but I think he's going to be back with the Chargers on his current contract. They also did not take a tight end. And, the Bengals were supposed to take a tight end. A lot of people had the Chargers taking a tight end. Chargers look like they're going to run it back with Gerald Everett and Donald Parham. Shout out PSM. Dolphins only had 4 picks in this draft. One of them, was Devon Achane at 84th overall. Absolutely love this fit for Devon Achane. Explosive player, pass catcher, yak guy, just like the kind of guy that Kyle Shanahan / Mike McDaniel are going to covet Raheem Mostert's almost done. He's 31, 32 years old. Jeff Wilson's on a 1-year deal. So really like that landing spot for Devon Achane. Not a ton to talk about here, though. This team only made 4 picks. Evan, what'd you think?
Yeah, and they forfeited their first-round pick for the Tom Brady, Don Yee stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they traded number 29 to the Broncos for Bradley Chubb. And then they got Jalen Ramsey for a 3rd-round pick. And then they got a 5th-round pick, or they got Jeff Wilson for a 5th-round pick. So, they're kind of one of the teams that is kind of hard to grade because they invest in veterans, but they're quality veterans. But they didn't have a first-round pick. I mean, they get penalized in the draft grades for that. So I gave them a C+. But I like what they did with the draft capital that they did have. Cam Smith, super talented South Carolina cornerback. And then Devon Achane, I'm really, really excited about. Leone and I and Amico were talking about who is the running back 3 in this class. Obviously, it's Bijan and then Gibbs. Amico and I think it's Achane.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah. And who does
Leone just kind of didn't take a stance, as usual.
Yeah. I mean, I would need to look at the full list, but I would almost certainly have Achane 3rd off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I mean,
and Amico was adamant about it. He was like,
yeah,
clearly Achane.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. And by the way, we do, even for redraft, we currently have Achane as the most valuable Dolphins running back. We have Achane 122nd overall, Mostert 136th, Jeff Wilson 150th. So even for redraft, even just for this year, we do have Devon Achane as the running back to own here.
Greg Cosell said that after watching Achane's tape, he thought that he could be more than just a satellite space back. Like he's like, nah, this dude is not Nyheim Hines. This guy can really run it. And God, I'm super excited. Like McDaniel just loves speed.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Covets speed, and Achane has it in spades. I mean, what an exciting landing spot. Hell, let's go.
I think
I am going to be so much higher on ADP on Achane than anybody else. I promise you that.
I want to be high on Tua this year, by the way. We're currently behind ADP on him because it seems like the market is actually really, really in on Tua. But yeah, I mean, Tua was on his way last year to being the late round quarterback you had to have until all the concussion stuff. So obviously there's going to be risk there, but I still think Tua is a really good bounce back candidate. Patriots. I thought Patriots kind of got a gift, it was like 17 overall. I saw Christian Gonzalez getting mocked like 6th overall, 7th. I mean, people were talking about Christian Gonzalez like really high. He falls to them at 17 overall. They don't take any skill players until the 6th round. I wouldn't know if they didn't take a quarterback, despite all the Mac Jones stuff that was out there. What do you think of New England's draft? They made, I believe, 12 picks to the New England Patriots.
Yeah, and they took a kicker and a punter,
Yeah.
And this is a team that has drafted like long snappers in the past. So you can't say it's surprising, but I had to penalize them for that. But I like a lot of the players that they got. They needed a draft like this. I mean, their roster has really grown stale in recent years. Christian Gonzalez, I mean, they got him after moving down, and they got a 4th-round pick. And then they stole Keon White, who I think was definitely a top 30 player in Daniel Jeremiah's rankings, and was like super, very productive at Georgia Tech. He ran a 4.49 at 281 pounds. Marte Mapu was a dude that scouts just absolutely loved. Like a linebacker safety hybrid, 6'3", 221. It'll be interesting to see how they play him. But I mean, the Patriots are willing to get very creative defensively and finding a spot for him. I think that. And then Jake Andrews could end up as a starter at guard or center out of Troy. Kayshon Boutte, who they got from LSU, wide receiver, had an amazing freshman year and kind of plateaued after that. But I think that he was a worthy addition to their wide receiver stable. I think they had like a pretty meat and potatoes draft, just the kicker and the punter. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah. So a 6th-round pick, for Boutte to fall that far in this draft, in this wide receiver class, is kind of a red flag.
Oh, it's a big red flag
for me, for sure. I did want to say on Ramondre Stevenson. So they didn't take a running back. Damian Harris is gone. And the Athletic, not, just speculating, not reporting per se, but James Robinson is like no lock to make the team. They have him out right now in the final roster. I mean, we have Ramondre Stevenson 29th. Overall, obviously, he was one of our favorites from last year. We're getting him in the hundreds. You're not going to be able to get him that cheaply this year. Jets. Will McDonald, the edge guy at 15. They take the center, Joe Tippmann, at 43. There were rumors, though, that I'll let you go on their draft class first, and then I did want to talk about the running back stuff. Go ahead on the Jets stuff, because I know Aaron Rodgers has to be considered a part of this class. A lot of people, though, Evan, said that the Jets gave up too much to get Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, man, I don't think so at all. And people got mad at me that read the draft grades because that I gave them an A because, they got the 2-time MVP, and then they started off with 2 first-round talents and Will McDonald, who's just an insane athlete, and then Joe Tippmann, who I had him as a first-rounder in my first mock, and they got him at 43 overall. Carter Warren was a 4-year starter at Pitt. He's got 36-inch arms at 6'6", 314, but he got hurt last year, and I think that hurt him. And then Israel Abinikanda was a really interesting pick because this dude's highlight reel is outrageous. He's sort of like a straight line-ish home run hitter. But he's interesting because Breece Hall is coming off this ACL. Yeah. And we've seen, those recoveries have not gone super smoothly in recent years.
I'm a little worried on Breece Hall.
Yeah.
They were linked to Jamal Williams and other running backs in free agency. There was a report that came out after this draft that they actually wanted to take Jahmyr Gibbs. They take Israel Abinikanda in round 5. They still have Michael Carter and Donovan Knight, both of who I think can play on their roster. The reports on Breece Hall have been good, on his ACL haven't been good, but I don't know, man. His ADP is around 25 right now. I think I'm shying away at that price, and that pains me because I love Breece Hall. He was awesome last year. It's just a little scary what they've been telling us. So,
yep, the team is telling us things in this dynasty startup that I'm doing that I keep talking about. I'm going to keep talking about it. Breece Hall went at the end of the first round, and I was just like, oh.
Yeah. Running backs in dynasty startups, yeah, and especially one that already has an ACL.
So it was a big mistake. I don't from a process standpoint, that was a huge mistake.
Yeah. Let me actually see where we have Breece. Yeah, we have Breece in Superflex tight end premium. We have Breece 38th, ranked 38th.
That's a little high. Oh, and then I want to say one more thing. Zach Kuntz, who started his career at Penn State, incredible athlete, went to Old Dominion, was super productive. They got him in this at pick 220. I was very surprised that he lasted that late, but
yeah,
he had the top composite athleticism score of any tight end at the combine in a historically great tight end class.
Yeah. Mike Gesicki, athlete-esque. Okay. Pittsburgh. I mentioned the Bears. I thought meaningfully improving their offensive line can make a difference in fantasy. The Steelers, similarly, improving their offensive line, I think can make a difference in fantasy. They used the 14th overall pick on Broderick Jones, offensive tackle out of Georgia. We'll have Brandon Thorne on later this summer, but I don't know, Evan. The Steelers might actually have a competent offensive line, and the Bears might have a competent offensive line this year also. What do you think of the Steelers draft?
Yeah, and Allen Robinson is a part of this, so whatever you think about him. They got him for nothing. They got him for a 7th-round pick swap. I love this draft. Everybody loved this draft for Pittsburgh because they just got a lot of value according to the consensus board. And they just ripped off value at every pick. Broderick Jones, awesome pick at number 14. Now they have a chance. You remember we were talking about how bad their offensive line was for the last couple of years. Now they have a chance to have quality starters at all 5 positions and actual depth, bumping some of those dudes that had to play into reserve roles. I feel really good about the state of their offensive line right now. Joey Porter Jr., he's a big, stiff press corner. And he's got to get his hands on receivers. He's not going to turn, flip his hips and run. He's going to learn from one of the best press corners of all time in Patrick Peterson. Those are going to be their starting outside corners, I would expect. And then Keanu Benton, they got him at number 49. He had first-round buzz. And then they got Darnell Washington at 93. Now he fell due to a knee injury, but he had first-round buzz as well. And then Nick Herbig, awesome college linebacker out of Wisconsin. And I've also heard good things about this the Purdue cornerback, Corey Trice, who they got in the 7th round. They had an awesome draft, and I don't think there's any way around it. I gave him an A.
I don't think it's crazy to think that the Steelers' offense can make a leap into real fantasy relevance this year. Offensive line, Pickett in year 2, Deontay Johnson, Pickens, Allen Robinson, Freiermuth, Jalen Warren's going to play on pass downs. I think they have pieces to at least be relevant, not elite, but relevant. Last one we're going to do here is the Tennessee Titans. So I actually thought that there was a good chance the Titans would trade up to number 3 to take Will Levis. And then I was like, well, maybe they'll take him at 11 because I had these Levis to Titans bets. They end up getting Will Levis at 33 overall. And I like taking a shot on Will Levis there. Tannehill's going to start this year, I think, and play. And Derrick Henry is going to play with him one more time, try to make one more run with this archaic style. In 2024, though, I think it'll almost certainly be Levis and a modern NFL scheme. What do you think of the Levis, trading up for Levis? Anything else on the Titans draft?
I think moving up for Levis was okay. They did give up a 2024 third, but it costs money to go up and get quarterbacks. And see, I didn't like Will Levis that much, so right. That can't. I'm not super positively influenced by that, but I do think at number 33, I think he's worth drafting. Skoronski is going to be a good player in the league. It's just he's got 32-inch arms. Are they going to play him? Are they going to try him at left tackle? He's the number 11 overall pick in the draft. They've got they signed Andre Dillard, but that dude wasn't very good in Philadelphia, and they gave him a big deal. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know what position Skoronski is going to play. And then Tajay Spears, the running back that they drafted in the 3rd round, like, did you really need to do that? Number 1, number 2, this dude has his knees are blown out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so I didn't like their draft, C-.
I saw the reports on Spears. It was like, did the Titans really not know that this dude doesn't have anything in his knees?
Right.
Like, they must have known that, right? So, I'm not going to double count that. He must
have been taken off at least half the team's boards. I mean, you should be able to get a guy like that in the 6th round if you really want him. They took him 81 overall.
I was a little surprised that they didn't take any wide receivers. I mean, their wide receiver room is thin. I mean, Traylon Burks and Chig.
Yeah.
Are going to have a ton of opportunity. They have total dust behind them. I guess they did take one wide receiver, Colton Dowell from Tennessee Martin in round 7. But yeah, I don't think he's going to have an impact. And Traylon Burks is going to have a ton of opportunity this year. Ton.
Yeah, he is. I saw Paul Kuharsky in their post-draft press conference up there asking Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel, like, have you just devalued the wide receiver position? And they're up there getting all pissed.
Yeah, we have Traylon Burks 73rd overall right now in half PPR. That's about 7 spots ahead of ADP. I mean, the only other wide receivers on this team we have ranked are Nick Westbrook-Ikine and Kyle Phillips. I mean, it's not good.
Chig,
yes, we have Chig 118th.
Nice
overall. That is 15 spots ahead of ADP. So yeah, we're definitely in on Chig. All right, we've said it all. Perhaps too much, but we said it all about the NFL draft. Stay tuned to this podcast. We will be going more in depth on the landing spots for the rookies awards betting. I think is really interesting markets to look at this time of year. We'll be back with a podcast on that. Draft Kit Pro subscribers, you do have access now to all the dynasty rankings are updated and all the best ball rankings are updated. It's a great time to be alive and drafting. For Evan, for producer Luke, I'm Adam. Good luck, everybody.